Welcome to the AtoZrunning podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andi.
And I am Zach, and up next, your hosts discuss a comprehensive approach to time management for runners, and after that, the world of running updates, including Diamond League, Ncaa championships, and fastness everywhere. Hey, don't forget, we want to engage with you and hear your questions and thoughts about running and training, especially so that we can feature them at our end of month Q&A listener episode. And in order to do that, all you need to do is go to AtoZrunning.com/questions, or just look for any of the ways to contact us at AtoZrunning.com.
Sounds good. And on Instagram, Tawny mentioned her race recap and included us. She won the Ogden Half Marathon, and she wrote this about the podcast. I was convinced that I wasn't going to look at pace or splits the entire race, and that's just what I did. I ended up getting my splits after, and I'll share them below. But wow, doing that was a fun way to race. Thanks for sharing, Tawny, and congrats on your 1:17:50.
Very nice.
And your win. Super speedy.
And it is a fun way to do any kind of running.
And that being running by effort, not looking at your watch. So we were excited that Tawny did that, and she mentioned us on her Instagram. So thank you.
As we like to say, get the effort right, and the rest will follow.
Is that what we like to say?
I just made it up. And now we
do
like
like
to say
it, I guess.
We do.
Very true. Very cool. So coming up this coming weekend, there is the Light Point 5K in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
If you're in the West Michigan area, that's a great one. Lots of fun.
And we also have Johnny's Run, which is going to be later in the month. And I'll also link that at AtoZrunning.com.
This is good stuff. Well, speaking of good stuff, we want to talk to you about time and how to control it. And it is not as hard as it sounds. So, let's get started.
Distance running takes time. Whether you're out there actually logging the miles and getting the running in, or you're taking care of your body through strength, mobility, body care, sleep, we need some of that too. It takes time to be a distance runner. And sometimes we wonder, hey, do I have enough time to do this sport? Or a lot of us will think, do I have time to get in my run a day? And it's kind of stressful to live that way. And so we discuss time management in this episode. Not that we have it all figured out, but we like to draw on resources and from our experience and watching others who have done it well. So we'd like to give that information to you today. And it starts with something that I have yet to do. So I want to be transparent with all of you. And that's an evaluation and creating a time log. And I'm going to do that with you all this week.
I had to do that in high school in my 10th grade English class. It was awful.
Well,
I try to write down every minute of the day.
It's supposed to be, this is what I read, it's supposed to be in 15-minute allotments.
That's exactly what it was in high school.
Yeah. Well, the reason why, I have a point to this.
I know.
As I was delving into this, because I always want to continuously streamline my process in life, because I think we all really want that. So the reason that you do this is because we don't often know objectively where we're spending our time. Like, it's not going to feel the same depending on what you do. You know, like when you're running an 800, those, a couple minutes feel really long. Well, in life, if we're distracted or we're doing things we like or we're really absorbed in tasks, we might not actually realize how much time we're spending. Our perception of time.
So I want to see a study that compares like tasks if you're doing them on a phone versus no technology.
Ooh.
Because I bet the perception is dramatically different in the passage of time.
Likely. That would be very interesting. So after you do this and you log your activities, there are some questions that I think would be very valuable to ask yourself, or ask myself, since I'll be doing this too.
Wait, so we should be asking you? Is that what?
Yeah, you go ahead and ask me after
Everyone
I'm done
ask
with this.
Andy after this.
Did everything you needed to get done? What activity or task required the most time? What time of day are you most productive? What times of day were you least productive? Did I have time, or did you have time in your life's priorities for like school, family, work, faith, responsibilities, whatever's important to you? It's going to be very individual for that question. And then how did my training impact the day? So this is kind of a thorough questionnaire. And if you didn't get a chance to absorb all of that, I did put that at AtoZrunning.com. I actually made
I don't remember all the questions.
a blog post for this. If you want to like go through this evaluation with me to try to make the most of your time management, those are some great questions I think that will help add clarity to where time is being spent and also where time is being wasted.
Speaking of, we should do a fun little thing right now because chances are a lot of you listening to this are either running or like traveling somewhere, commuting in some capacity, driving or otherwise. We know this because you tell us this is when you're listening. And so, because you're not going to remember every question Andy just said, I'm going to give you one question. I'm going to ask it, and then you need to pause our speaking voices and think on this question. And once you have an answer, then hit play again, because then we're going to actually address.
We'll pause so that they don't have to do that.
No, we're not going to sit here and pause for 5 minutes of silence.
Oh, okay. Well,
for the listeners. Okay, so you have to do it. And the question is, of the list that Andy gave, what is the thing that takes the most time regularly for you that is not essential? So like you have to sleep. Don't count that in this. You have to work if you have a job, so don't count that in this. And other like the essential stuff that you really have to do no matter what amount of time it takes. Okay, so anything outside of that, what takes the most amount of time in a regular or normal day? Now pause and think. Unpause. Okay, so now the best part about this conversation and Andy's thorough preparation is how can we do things to make sure we're not wasting time regularly. So yeah, continue on.
Pruning the time wasters.
Well, I have a lot of those people in my life, so I just have to get rid of them? Is that what you're saying?
Actually, we're going to talk about honoring life priorities here in a little bit. But yeah, entertainment in the form of shows, games, social media can drain time that we just don't have. I mean, that's frank.
True.
We don't really have that time as a busy athlete, and setting time parameters can be a really good way to help you in this regard. So binging a show, I'm just going to put that out there. Like a lot of people will say like they don't have time for stuff, but they're binge watching shows. And I'm sorry that this might make people feel uncomfortable for me to say, but that's not a good reason to not get things done.
That doesn't make anyone feel uncomfortable. It just makes them mad at you because they like their shows.
I know.
Let me back up and just say watching shows, period.
So
there's very little necessity in watching shows. Now, people will say things like, well, you know, it's nice to have like some downtime.
Yeah, downtime.
In truth, it is. However, there's been a number of studies, here I go, on the fact that watching something versus like reading something, well, I'm talking about like the recuperative rejuvenation that happens in this kinds of times, reading something, going for a walk, or a light, easy jog. Yes. When we're talking about trying to rejuvenate ourselves, there are better ways than watching. But you might love
that. I mean,
it is something
like
you can enjoy.
You love stories and entertainment. I went to school for film, and there's a lot to be appreciated through this kind of entertainment. Remember, Colleen Quigley gave a really good piece of advice, and that is, do have your cross training be the time that you watch your show.
Yes, yep. And that's when I do my most amount of reading. So like the pleasure reading. So yes, that is indeed.
And I've taken that to heart, and that's when I watch my shows is when I'm cross training. So
True.
We're going to actually talk more about that later and like more tips for being able to multitask in a way that's not splitting your mental energy. So there's one thing that's mindless, because there's a lot of studies that say that you should not multitask. So we're going to talk about, and I shouldn't call it multitasking. Maybe I'll call it maximizing instead of multitasking.
Well, there's a difference between multitasking and multiple things you're doing at once. Those are not always.
If something isn't a real task, then it's not multitasking.
Well, like riding a bike and watching a show at the same time is not, by definition, multitasking in the same sense as watching a show and writing a blog post at the same time. That is
Right.
multitasking.
Right, because your brain is
Because you have to
needed
code
in the
switch. You
same
can't
way.
do both things at the same time. You're just bouncing back and forth. So that's the difference here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So another part of pruning time wasters is setting limits on apps. I've done that. You can also create a downtime. So at 9 p.m., everything goes dark. I think most phones have this function in your settings. And I think that if it doesn't, I think you can do that in different ways too. So setting limitations can help you be mindful of your time. If there's something you need to do, then it will remind you that you don't have that much time to do it. For instance, if you go specifically on an app to do a specific task and then you get really distracted, you're going to learn very quickly that you don't have time to be distracted by all the other things. So that has been really beneficial to me personally, and I've talked to others that have found that to be extremely useful as well.
What's been beneficial to me is the delete button as well, or the trash can. Like just move the app right over there. It's gone. And then it's back next day. But, that's a different thing.
Yeah. So self-discipline can
yeah.
be helped through accountability. And a lot of us would love for there to be self-discipline without accountability, but it can truly help. Next, we are going to be talking about honoring life priorities. So as mentioned in the time management evaluation that I spoke of earlier, consider your life priorities and how much time is being made for them now and how much time you would like there to be for them. And every person, like I mentioned earlier, will be different, but honoring life priorities may include involving other people. So I'm going to talk about relationships a little bit here. And
relationships with Andy.
Relationships, yes. And this can be in the form of friendships. It can be in the form of, a family. It can be in the form of a lot of different kinds of relationships in your life. But communication, relationship experts say this, so it's not Andy coming up with this, but communication is key, and it's been said, and it will be said over and over. And the truth of the matter is there's a lot that we can solve if we're able to articulate what our goals are, how much time will be spent, labeling expectations of what the next season of life will bring, but then also hearing back from those important in your life if that's going to work and what their goals and dreams are too, and working together to come up with a thriving life. So it's not going to be in isolation, because if you're living life with others, you aren't. And that's where conflict happens, and when people have different thoughts of the way that things should be.
We should do an exercise right now for the audience.
Ooh.
Where we intentionally enter into some kind of conflict between the two of us.
That would be
and
too
then
hard.
see if we can find a way to resolve it on air.
That would be a really entertaining show.
Nope, it would not. This is why reality TV is not interesting, because nobody wants to see other people's junk.
Well, it can help us realize, though, that everyone does have these issues. So if you are having some problems in communication because of running, you're not alone. We've actually gone through a season of our life where I was not okay with the amount of time that Zach was spending in training, and we had to talk it out. And once we finally did, and I understood, he'd just be late to everything, and so I would be mad.
I mean, that wasn't because of that. That's just normal.
But
also,
that was part of it.
This week is going better now after we talked about it.
You mean this year? This 2 years? 3 years?
I was joking,
anyway,
yeah.
We digress. I'm not really sure where you were going with that. But another part of our conversation with athletes is that sometimes we're going to have cycles or seasons, some may call it, that are more or less intense with training. So I have a season I'm really going to target. I want to do everything I can to get every adaptation I can. I want to find out what is physically possible for me, which is going to take a lot more time and effort than if I'm going to be doing a maintenance cycle, or a cycle that I'm going to be maybe prioritizing other things in my life, or I'm going to be moving or getting a new job. It's possible that I would need more energy for that.
And the question in these moments starts with, what is the maximum sustainable, comfortably sustainable time commitment, regular kind of commitment you can make in a day-to-day capacity? And so you start there and you start to figure out, okay, this is about how much time I have for things. And then the question that we tend to follow that up with is is that enough to achieve the goal that's in front of me? And if it's not, we have to then simply be frank with ourselves and say, okay, I either have to change the goal or find a season in life when I can manage what it would take. A good example of this is a runner might say, I can only handle running 3 or 4 days a week. I cannot run more than that with the life busyness that I have. And then that same person says, I want to run a 30-minute marathon PR. Invariably, it becomes especially difficult to increase performance potential without running more than 50% of the days in the week. And the more than, the likelier we are to get closer to performance improvement. So in a situation like that, it's not that. You don't talk to an athlete and say, well, you can't do it if you're only running 4 days a week. You might as well quit. No, you take what you have available to you and you do what you can with it. But you also then evaluate your goals and say, is this going to help me reach these goals? And if not, when or how can I potentially adjust?
Yeah, good point. That brings us to knowing your training priorities and what you can do with that time to maximize what you're doing and the work you're putting in and the time. This is all about time, right? The time that we're investing. So some questions you can ask yourself. Again, I'll link these. What period of training are you in? And how much time is it going to require? What do you need to train with health? Because if you're going to use all the time to only train and not take care of your body outside of that work, are you going to be healthy? Is it sustainable for you? Do you understand your training in order to create modifications? Because flexibility can be one of your greatest strengths as a busy distance runner. Knowing how to be flexible, that starts with understanding your training and what you're trying to accomplish. Are you recovering well? Is your sleep and nutrition sufficient? So most runners actually don't know all the pieces to that puzzle, and that's normal. We're here to help. That's why we have this podcast. We also have coaching services. We have a blog that has articles. There's the World Wide Web that you can look for. There's so much information.
That's an interesting place to be.
It is. So if you don't know, don't feel bad right now. It's just, this is part of learning and understanding what we need as athletes. I think there can be a lot of time that's wasted in training when maybe there's not enough time for adaptations. Maybe you're running hard too often, and it's kind of, if you're looking for running to be something that helps you improve as a runner, then that would be a kind of a waste of time. If you're not allowing time for adaptations, you're just going to plateau. So there's a lot of questions that you might want to ask yourself when it comes to knowing your training priorities. And like I said, we have lots of info on that. And
important to remember that most of those kinds of things are also contextual. So the way true. We interpret and adjust to priorities and training needs is not the same in all phases of a training period, in all stages of development as a runner, in all periods of time in the year, depending on if you're in a winter weather kind of scenario, all this kind of stuff. So weather in general, hot, cold, or otherwise. And that's the most difficult part. When Andy says, it tends to help for people to have outside help. I was in a conversation with another runner this morning, in fact, and he asked me, he's like, so do you train yourself? And I was like, no, I have a coach. I know how to train myself, potentially, but that does not mean that I am a truly objective voice in my own work. And so we can know all the things even that we might need to know for a given thing. And yet at the same time, it makes a difference where we can have additional input. Yeah. So that's where that piece of so people talk so often about coaches, but they also talk about continuing to learn, just never stop trying to learn, because as soon as I stop reading on things, I start forgetting some of the details that I am not constantly encountering, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Good stuff. Now, these are super practical things, because I love podcasts that are practical and articles that are practical. So how do you add life value to training? Again, super personal, depending on what's important to you, but maybe you'd meet a friend for a run.
Oh, I see what you mean by life value. It took me a minute to figure out what you meant by that.
You know how I mentioned honoring priorities. So how are we able to honor our priorities, but also mesh them with training priorities?
It's worthwhile to comment briefly on Brian Deemer's interview recently, because he had some reflections on this that were really quite profound, where he, being in his own running, an Olympic medalist, multiple time Olympian, all that kind of stuff. And he's talking about, but it needed something more than that to be worth all the work. And he talked about how he coaches athletes and over all of the decades he coached and the kinds of conversations around that kind of stuff. So yes, these are very important things when it comes to sustaining purpose behind the kind of stuff we're doing.
Yeah. So meeting a friend for a run.
You did that recently.
I love to do that. One of my favorite things in life, actually. If your friend isn't a runner, maybe they'd want to bike next to you or rollerblade or whatever. Now, maybe you're asking as a favor for a long run, but maybe like they actually like to do that. That would be better. So maybe there's an option there. Or you could do like core or strength together, maybe yoga together, depending on what they like to do to stay active. There's room for that too. That can help you be a better runner.
Pickleball.
Pickleball? Okay. I don't know if I've played that actually. I hear people talk about pickleball. It just sounds funny.
The first time I ever played pickleball was when I was helping at a middle school and was playing against middle schoolers. And of course I thought to myself, I'm going to definitely destroy these middle schoolers. I didn't.
Well,
probably shouldn't have
shared that.
Don't
underestimate those middle schoolers.
Yep.
You can also have your family be part of your training. We've actually posted a lot about this because Zach and I have really embraced training as parents, and both of us have tried to train with a lot of gusto. It's a gusto. That's such a weird way to say it.
That's an interesting way to do it. We train with gusto.
Both of us have...
You should put that in your Instagram profile.
Train with gusto.
We train with gusto.
But with two young boys, and there are a lot of ideas that we've put in an article called Fitness, a Family Event. And there are things like park runs, track runs, where you can involve the kids. And even if they can't run yet, there's ways for you to do that safely with them. You can also use running as a time to process or practice an upcoming presentation for work or school on easy days. Don't do that on hard days. Don't do it. It's better to focus on your work while you're running and not bring outside stuff with you. But for easy days, you can take time practicing these things. I've done that. I do presenting. That's my job. And I'll practice and go through some of the things that I might say on an easy run.
It's kind of funny to run near her when she's doing it because you can hear her delivering a speech while she's running.
I don't do that a lot. I don't think I've ever done that with you. I don't.
Oh, well.
Maybe I have, but I don't think I've done it with you. Usually this is my solo time. I'm not doing that when I'm running with other people because I'm prioritizing.
I'm not saying you're doing that with your friend. I'm just,
okay.
But this is actually
a joke. I know.
This is actually a well-examined concept because while we're running, we have increased blood flow and increased oxygen movement, transportation, especially, as Andy said, when you're running easy, so you're staying well within an aerobic range. It just so happens that our brains function at a higher level in nearly every measurable capacity, creativity, critical thinking, all the good stuff, right? So that we know, beyond all doubt. Being the case, it's also a great time to think about complex things like relational difficulties. If you're having to have a conversation, rehearsing it a bit or thinking about it a bit. I say that because when I was a teacher and I was having to manage difficult situations with students, I spent a lot of time thinking about those situations and what I needed to try to say and do while I was running. And it proved very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of my ideas for stuff with A to Z running come when I'm
Not
running.
Surprising.
Not surprising at all. So it can be used as productive time on those easy days. You could also listen to a seminar or a podcast to help sharpen your understanding for a job, work, home life, or if you want to learn more about running, subscribe to this podcast.
You could listen to a podcast where...
Too many plugs in this episode.
Okay, all
right. So how can you add training to
flip
life?
it around?
So we're flipping it back around. Do you ever have periods of time where you're waiting, watching kids, watching a show, where you could add value to training? There's likely a time where you could do that.
Hanging out at the pool, doing a core workout.
You might feel there's some instances that you might feel silly or self-conscious, and I understand everyone has different comfort levels when it comes to this, but I am very comfortable with being at the park watching my kids doing a core workout or working on some kind of mobility anything that I'm needing in that day that I haven't done yet, I will do that when my kids are playing at the park.
You're also especially effective. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you're good at getting other people to do it with you, which is always a little bit funny when suddenly Andy has like 4 or 5 other people at the park doing core workouts with her while they're watching their kids. It's like, how did you convince all these people to do this silly thing?
We can be culture changers. I think we can. So if there are others to do it with
it's
you.
coming. Core at the... No, never mind. I don't have it. Okay.
Core culture?
Keep going.
All right. So there are some things that you can do, though, that beyond that, I'm going to list a few of them just for ideas to help you start thinking of things you might be able to do. You can do legs up a wall. You can roll, stretch, use massage gun, do yoga, core, leg strength, etc. So those are all kinds of things you can do when you're waiting around. I would say that
tends to be the most likely thing of value is something that helps in recovery aspects in some sense, because those things tend to be very easy to do, and you don't have to like run in place for an hour, which would be more difficult than just putting your legs on the wall.
But like the park thing though, I feel like is good for still doing like strength and core. But if you're like standing in line at the grocery store, maybe stretching would be more appropriate.
Or at a staff meeting in the office. I don't know if you should be doing a core
yet,
workout. I do sometimes stretch in the corner. Yes.
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time sitting at a desk? A lot of people do. And if you're working from home, it gives you the opportunity, if you're not on camera, to be doing a lot of different things while you're sitting down and working. First off, I should preface this before I get into these things. Try to stand up and move around, because sitting for long periods of times is one of the worst things you can do posturally for running. So try to stand up, sit down, do a variety if you're able.
Runner friend of mine recommends periodically getting rid of the chair and doing a wall sit while you continue working.
I think I know who suggested that.
Might be.
Might be.
Not going to answer.
Okay.
Keep going.
So Wharton's neck stretches. So doing some of these, and you've probably seen me do these on some Instagram where you're gently
Sometimes
pulling your
during the
head to the
podcast.
side and around and to the front and to the back. And it really is helpful, especially if you hold tension in your shoulders like me. You could do a sitting piriformis stretch, which a lot of you will know. You just put your foot over your opposite leg and lean forward.
That's especially easy to do, socially speaking, because
it just looks like you're crossing your leg. Yeah.
So it's like, oh, then just changing my sitting position. But in fact, I'm doing a stretch.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can also roll your feet if you're at home. I don't know if they allow that in the workplace. Like taking off your shoes if your feet are stinky might not be super nice to those around you.
I would not recommend it.
But if you're at home working, that's a great thing to do, is roll your feet. We also have compression socks. That's so easy. So easy. Compression socks are amazing for if you're standing or you're sitting in the workplace. And there's so many more. We actually wrote an article with ideas with more of these things at Lifestyle Hacks for Recovery. I've linked to that at AtoZrunning.com with the show notes. Also, we're going to move on to the next thing. Create a schedule. We all know that we're going to do things better when the decision has already been made to do this thing at a certain time, and we don't lollygag or procrastinate quite as much when we've set an engagement for ourselves in a day. So this not only applies to training, which I think it's helpful to do that for training. It's always helpful for me when I actually schedule with other people to go running, because then I'm committed to like get up and go at that time.
The only way something happens at a certain time when someone else is involved in
right.
the thing.
It's an accountability thing for sure. But you not only do that for training, but also in everyday life. According to Proof Hub, 10 to 12 minutes invested in planning your day will save you at least 2 hours of wasted time and effort.
Better still,
throughout the day,
when your plan can be mostly routine.
Yes.
So you create a regular structure, which isn't going to be perfect all the time, especially if you don't have a regular structure like a work schedule or something like that that's always consistent. But whatever the thing may be, create for yourself a reasonable structure and routine. Everyone else in your life will thank you as well.
Zach loves routine, not only for his running, but also for his life. It takes me a lot more effort to do so, but the things that I have and I've invested in creating routines and good habits for have really benefited me as a runner and then also as a professional and mom. There's lots of reasons, well-rounded reasons that habits and routines are beneficial. They'll also help your training process go better and faster. So if you have your routine memorized, it's going to be faster than if you're having to do it with a video or have to cue it up in some way or regard or even reading it off of a sheet. If you know it by heart, it's going to go much faster.
You know those scenes in the movies where like the opening scenes? I love these opening scenes, by the way, when movies do this, where it's just like someone going through their morning routine. Like the movie starts with the alarm and they wake up and they're going through their morning routine.
Like an arrow.
And it's just like this.
Doing pull-ups.
Yes, exactly. Well, I was thinking of I Am Legend with, with the, is it Will Smith? Is that he's the one? And anyway, so the point is it's like this well-oiled, manicured routine where people are just sliding from one thing to the next, and it happens so quickly. It also helps that they like never show the whole thing. It just cuts.
Yeah.
Point is, that's how I live my life. My morning is the same when I wake up before the boys do. If I don't wake up before the boys do, you never know what's going to happen.
Who knows?
But it's like you watch them, and it's like they eat the exact same thing for breakfast. They press the button without even looking when they're walking past the coffee maker, things like that.
Yeah.
So there's a point to all of that, however, a lesson in that, because if I am often doing this, lamenting how I have very little time and need things to happen faster and more smoothly, this is where saving 5 or 10 minutes in between tasks and around stuff makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yep. Over time, especially, the more you're doing the habit, the more routine it is.
Right on.
And also doesn't give you the opportunity to get delayed. So
it's true.
It's easy for things to delay us. Now, Forbes suggests organizing your work around your energy levels. So it is often suggested to do morning runs because it actually helps you become more productive at your peak times during the day. Now, a lot of people will do that just for the low impact on other life priorities like family. And that's a great reason for it too. But I have heard many runners say how sluggish they feel for afternoon runs, and energy levels are low at that point. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it because it actually helps your energy later on, but it does make it more difficult to get out the door the longer that you wait.
3 key things to remember about time of day timing. So Daniel Pink did all the research. You don't have to go do any of your own research at this point. Obviously, you could do more studying than just one source.
We love whenever
Daniel Pink did a substantial amount of research so that he could write a book called When, the Science of Perfect Timing. I don't know anyway. When is the name of the book. Read it. It's great. And what he starts to draw on is that certain things happen best at certain times of day for certain types of people. And there's really only a few different categories of like, the morning person, the night owl, that kind of stuff. And in general, most people, we tend to be more productive in the morning hours, like before noon. We almost all experience a pretty serious afternoon slump at some point in the afternoon where like productivity is almost zero and motivation is low and all that kind of stuff. We'd be best off just taking a nappuccino, as Daniel Pink recommends. That's like a quick shot of espresso. Then you set a timer for 20 minutes and then
we are not recommending this.
I mean, not when you're at work.
He's just telling you about it because it's interesting.
It's possible that people I know have done this at work, and it's actually proven to be more productive after the fact, which on the whole is probably actually saving your company time. But anyway, I'm not recommending you do that unless you have boss's permission. So point is, we do see this ebb flow dynamic. What we also know is that our performance potential on the whole tends to be higher in the afternoon than in the morning. So a lot of people have said, I feel like I can't I'm trying to run my hard efforts in the morning. It's just not as great in the afternoon. It's faster and stuff. Well, that's probably true because that tends to be true for most people. But it's also harder to motivate ourselves in the afternoon. This is the third thing I'm going to mention, because we tend to experience a growing sense of anxiety and concern over the course of the day. Most people, not everybody, but most people, because there's just more things that we're encountering over the course of the day. Whereas the first thing in the morning, we tend to feel the most optimistic, the most motivated Not necessarily that you have like tons of energy and you're just ready to fire. Morning people do, but not everybody does. However, at the same time, even if you're not a morning person, you still tend to be more optimistic in the morning, and that matters.
That is all really interesting. We could probably do an episode on that.
Just on that. We'll just sit here
and
and read Daniel Pink's book.
I do think, though, it is important, too, if you are thinking about when your race will be, morning, afternoon, evening, that's also very keen to think about. So let's say you are a track athlete. I know we have some track athletes that listen to this podcast, not just road runners, and you might be targeting an evening race. Well, you might want to do some key workouts in the evening. That might be a good idea, because you're going to have a whole day of feeding yourself and knowing what it feels like. So those are also key things I wanted to mention. Now, just a few more that I have here. Learn to say no. I put more at the blog post that I created in addition to the subject matter today. Learning to say no can be difficult, and we talk about protecting our time and our energy as athletes and what it will take for us to achieve our goals. And saying no to one thing means saying yes in a bigger way to another thing. I'm not saying you need to have running be your life, but let's say we talk about like there is a season of your life you really want to target a main goal. Maybe you're not going to be playing beach volleyball every day the whole summer while you're training for your fall marathon. That might not actually work into your schedule, because that'd be taking too much of your energy and your time that you should be spending doing recuperative things after, recovery for running, or your workouts where you're going hard. So that's important to think about. So saying no to some things that might not be part of the plan.
Michael Bungay Stanier writes in The Coaching Habit, good read, and it's a short and quick one, which is always nice. He writes that anytime you say yes to a thing, you have to say no to something else, because we are assuming very few people are operating at lower than capacity on a regular basis. And capacity of what? Thank you for asking. Time and energy, the two most finite things that we operate within in the day-to-day sense. So time and energy are finite, and when we say yes to something, we almost invariably have to cut something else out to make space for it. So that's where this idea tends to become imperative, where we have to learn to deny certain kinds of things that might be certain interests, or it might be certain like asks or requests of us. And we can't say yes to everything, because we have to be saying no to some things if we are saying yes to anything.
And that's why we have to go back to those questions, though, earlier, like life priorities matter too. So even though they're more intangible, we have to consider how much time we want to invest in the more transcendent things in our life, like family and friends and faith. And, so I guess it's really important to also consider that. So saying no to a family event because you want to run, that might be something you have to do sometimes, but I'm guessing all the time that wouldn't help you have a thriving life.
And in saying that, while we like to talk about running, and that is, of course, the topic of our organization, it is also important to sometimes say no to running in order to maintain the priorities and the thriving life. And that's one of the difficult conversations. Difficult because our athletes don't tend to like to bring up to us that they feel like they can't handle the amount of what's going on and the balance is off or something like that. And yet at the same time, it's one of the most powerful things a coach can do for an athlete is to say, don't run tomorrow. You have too much going on, and it's going to make your life worse.
Right. And it probably will make your training worse too, because if you're trying to do too much and you're stressed about it, you're not enjoying it, you're becoming an obligatory runner, which we talked about on an episode, because there's a difference. There's a difference when it becomes obligatory. It is not as satisfying, and you also won't achieve the same way that you'd like to. So those are important things, and I like that you brought that up, Zach. And I'm going to bring that back to what we had said earlier about having there be seasons. It's okay. You're still a runner if you have a season where you're not doing full swing training. You still are. You're still a runner, and you're still valuable. Your worth doesn't change how you're doing in running. There's so much more to life. And even if you would like to be excellent, even if you have big goals, it's okay to take a step back for a while and take a break. There's a lot of really successful runners who've had years in between their PRs. So
and not just okay, but helpful, imperative, perhaps, to have the ebb with the flow.
Absolutely.
So
We want to make your life easier. In this next section, I'm going to give you some practical tips, and this will be the end of it. But it doesn't need to be the end of it because, of course, we're going to put even more at AtoZrunning.com. So just a couple quick things because we all love bullet points. Lay out your running clothes. Make it easy for yourself. Keep an extra set of work and running clothes in the car. That can help save you time going back and forth. Declutter. That's decluttering everything. Declutter your shoes to make it easier to find your current training shoes. That means decluttering your home because it's just easier for us to function and have better time management if we live in less clutter. Also, utilize free grocery pickup. Let's say you don't have time. Maybe you just need to get on a roller, or maybe you're in some like Normatec boots or whatever. Do your grocery shopping and then do free grocery pickup. I know a lot of grocery stores will do that. Our local Meijer does that. So it's free. So you might as well do that and maximize your time. You can automate your workflow and do batch work when that's applicable. You can memorize routes close to your house for time and distance. So you can just go out the door. You don't even need your watch. You just like head out. You know about how long it will take you, about how far. But it also decreases the decision-making process. If you're like, I have to do an hour and a half. Well, I know an hour and a half route around my neighborhood, or I know 45. So kind of getting familiar with your area can help you with that.
Or better yet, just do an out and back when you don't have the time to plan a route.
Out and back's great.
Run out for a certain amount of time and then come straight back.
Yeah.
And you've solved that problem.
Mm-hmm. But it does help to know your area. Consider maybe a YMCA family membership to make childcare accessible every day.
We are not making a YMCA plug at the moment.
We're not. Well, it
or
could be
something
any gym
similar
that like has childcare. And the reason why I added it to this list is because I've had a ton of discussions recently with parents that are like, I just don't see how you guys train and you have children. And there's a lot of things, like I've mentioned quite a few of them in this episode even, but having a YMCA family membership has been amazing because it's accessible every day. So I have the opportunity for my kids to go and play with others in an active way while I get my exercise.
And it should be noted that both Andi and Zach travel for work. Yeah. So both of us are having to single parent and train regularly. So it is not that it is not possible as much as it's finding the kinds of resources and assets or situations that help make it possible.
Yep.
And the broken treadmill in the basement is not helping at the moment.
It's not helping at the moment. But there's so many things. And if you have some ways that you have been able to better manage your time as a runner in training, I would love to hear from you because I'm always adding to my knowledge and my learning. And like I said earlier, I'm going to create a time log of my life. And
you're going to do it. Okay.
Yeah, right. I'm saying that it's a good idea and it's valuable. And from what I've been reading, it can be super helpful. And knowing just how we can hone in and manage our time and know how it's spent. Because I have a feeling that there are things that I spend time on that really aren't a priority. So,
yep.
He's like, I see it. You could just ask me.
No, I was just simply saying that's something that is true in general. Yeah. I was just saying in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple related things. Martin Hare on No Wasted Minutes. I'm going to link to a couple episodes that are related to this topic. If this is something that you want to overhaul in your own life that you think would be valuable and helping you become a better runner.
And the most valuable thing to remember is to get a grip.
What?
On time.
Oh.
And with that, let's get on to the world of running. Let's talk first about some A to Z runner updates because these are the most exciting things. Well, first off, Jacob and Bill finishing top 3 in some 5Ks over the weekend. That's always excellent and a little bit difficult when one of them may have been short a bit, so you can't get the official time, but you know it was going to be a PR. Nice work, Jacob. Yeah. So great work there. Shout out to Hannah and Christy for running some strong 5K efforts as well this weekend. And then Zach and his team won a triathlon relay, which is a lot of fun. He was the running portion. It was like, it was one person swam, one biked, all that stuff. So he did the half marathon and they cooked it. And then Dano finishing second age group in his half marathon. Great stuff all around. Okay, well, first up on the list of 2023 is the Diamond League in Rome.
When in Rome?
Yeah, when in Rome, the Golden Gala. So this is a good one. This tends to be the time of year, we mentioned this last time, where you start to see the faster times happen, and more frequently people are competing because you're trying to establish world rankings, which matter now more than ever, because if you recall, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, they updated the ways you can qualify for world championships and Olympics. And now it requires, more than anything else, a high world ranking.
Yeah.
And in order to get a world ranking, it's not about running fast times. I mean, certainly it doesn't hurt, but you have to compete. You have to place in certain types of events, and you have to beat other people who are ranked and things like that. So it's kind of fun because it just means more people have to race.
Well, yeah, there's opinions that some
there's
have
a
on
lot
this
of
because
negative.
If some
a
people
lot
don't
of
have
negative.
if some people don't have access to traveling all over the world.
Well, it's
for
not even
these
it's not even
events.
that. Like you don't want to. It's really not
hard.
fun to have to travel around a ton to race because it's hard on the body and stuff. And as Andy said, there's a whole lot of people in the world who just don't have the easy
Access,
option.
yeah.
Like if you live in Central Europe, you're set because you can basically take a train to all of the major races you need to. But if you live anywhere outside of Europe and it's hard to get to Europe, it's a lot harder to find these races. So anyway, as it were, these are the things. So in the Diamond League, we're seeing some high-level competitions happening more and more often. The men's 5,000 meter in Rome was one of those. They rocked the world list. 10 new additions from this one heat into the world top 20 this year. So that's impressive. Not all time, just this year. And we like to update you on the world list because it tends to give you an idea of who's going to be the who's who in the
World
race,
Championship.
in the World Championship. So Nicholas Kimeli of Kenya won the race in a blazing 12:46.
Yeah.
5,000 meter.
Which I did not know his name.
Yeah, well, that's because it was a pretty decent run for him.
Yeah, it was a PR, right? How much?
Yeah, about a 5-second PR. So I
Okay.
mean, he's been running.
Yeah,
under
he's been
13
running
minutes.
well for
Yeah, but then you had countryman Jacob Krupp right behind him, tenths of a second behind him. Also a personal best time. So both of these guys running 12:46. As soon as you start seeing people running in the 12:40s, you're adding them to the list of they could win everything kind of situations because there's just not that many people that can do that.
Right.
So a new world lead time for Nicholas Kimeli there and a meeting record in the Rome Diamond League. Setting Diamond League records is always impressive. Good stuff. And then a little ways back in the race, we had, I got to try to say this name. I'm going to go for it, Andy. From Burundi, a new national record in the 5,000 meter. The first time a Burundian, I believe that's how you say it, ran under 13 minutes. So that's cool. And his name, Thierry Ndikumwenayo. Nope, I said it wrong. Ndikumwenayo.
Nice.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, men's 3,000 meter steeplechase also was hot. Lemecha Girma of Ethiopia taking yet another great performance in 7:59 for the 3,000 meter steeplechase. It's very fast. So he's now on the top of the standings in the Diamond League for the event.
I mean, that makes sense.
Which, well, and it means something because Soufiane El Bakali of Morocco, who
we talked about
is
him
the
last
defending
week.
gold
They
medalist.
went against each other last week.
Yep. Well, he took over El Bakali this time and also put himself at the top of the standings, which is
this is exciting. I like them going back and forth like that.
Yep. And then we have to tell you, or maybe I
Yes.
should let Andy tell you.
We're excited to tell you.
About the women's 800 meter.
Yes, Mo won in a world-leading time of 1:57.01.
Yep. And things are just starting to look like a possible rematch situation in the World Championships from last Olympics, where you've got Mo of the U.S., Keely Hodgkinson of Great Britain, who is currently second on the world list.
She's also run a 1:57.
She's also run one. They're the only two who have been under 1:58 in the world this year. And
But
so
she's almost under 1:57.
I know.
1:57.01.
That's good stuff.
That's really fast.
We're looking
Very
forward
exciting
to
for
seeing how that
Team USA.
Yes.
We're looking pretty good.
Team USA has three of the top 4 fastest times in the world this year in Mo, and then in third and fourth is Ajay Wilson and Allie Wilson. That's good stuff. All right, so these are going to be exciting things. The U.S. Championships is coming up in 2 weeks as well, and we all know that that's going to be a lot of fun too. So let's get on to next on the list is the NCAA National Championships, outdoor track and field. That just happened as well. And as these things go, you get a very interesting, because the collegians at the top of the game tend to be part of the mix in the world class level of things too. But they're not all, they're from all over the place, which is always kind of fun because you get kind of this mix up in the NCAAs, and then come world championships, then everyone's running for their own countries, and it's always fascinating. I like it.
Yeah, that is cool.
It is. So in this instance, we've got quite a smattering of impressive upsets or unexpected victories, which is always cool. One of those, which was not an unexpected victory, but in the men's 800 meter, Moed Zahafi of Morocco, who is running collegiately still, took the win in the 800 meter and already holds the world leading time. So it wasn't surprising that he would win that race. But what was incredibly impressive was right behind him in second place was Navasky Anderson of Jamaica, who ran a 1:45:02, breaking a 45-year-old Jamaican national record.
That is a long-standing record.
45 years.
Incredible.
Yes.
Wow.
That was cool. All right.
That's got to feel really good. Yeah.
One of the interesting criticisms of the NCAA championships this year is because of the COVID situation, which the NCAA then granted all athletes who wanted to take advantage of it an additional year of eligibility. So you have situations like this, where in the men's 5,000 meters, first and second place were 7th-year senior Alan Hacker of Wisconsin and 6th-year senior Morgan Beadlescombe of Michigan State. Yes, you heard me right. They've both been officially in college for 6 and 7 years.
Wow.
So that's something. And as it goes, of course, they're not, they're Morgan Beadlescombe, you've heard his name. Well, who knows what they're doing, academically, but that doesn't matter because they still have eligibility, so they can use it. So Morgan Beadlescombe's been around the top of the scene for a bit now, and you'll hear his name again come U.S. championships, things like that. But then Alan Hacker of Wisconsin he's been one of those interesting stories where, okay, let's go all the way back. He was second in the Foot Locker National Championships in high school. Okay. Second to Grant Fisher.
Oh.
This is so 7th-year senior. They're the same age, but Grant Fisher's been out of college for like 3 years, only because, that Alan Hacker took advantage of the extra eligibilities, and he was injured for a bit, and so he had some red shirt.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Well, so the situation here that's just really cool is that Hacker, after a great high school career, struggled a bit in college and wasn't really rising to the attention he had initially. Until recently, where he started to, this is where I've got a second chance, if you will, because of the COVID scenario, and started to compete better and better, and then really just showed up big to win his first national title.
That's awesome. Speaking of winning big, Caitlin Toohey.
There it is.
Pulled out her dominating victory in the women's 5,000 meter run, and that was an interesting one to watch, and we can link to that as well, so you can watch it too, because it didn't look like for sure she was gonna win when there was a move made by the second place woman, and she didn't respond super quickly, which was really wise of her because it probably took less energy. Reeled her in, but dominated, just
crushing
that last lap. She was hauling.
If you didn't notice, we watched that race. We didn't watch all of these races, but that one we did.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, it was incredible, and she did it the hard way because she led most of the race as well.
She did. Now
I have to at least comment because NC State, her school, had 5 women in the national championship 5,000 meters. Now, you must understand, for the NCAAs to get to the national championships, you have to be among the best of the best because they only take a certain number. It doesn't matter how fast you run. You have to qualify out of your region and be in the top X number of qualifiers from the whole country. So you could be first in your region, but if you're not top 20, I can't remember what it is, it's 16 or 18 or something. If you're not in that list, you don't go to the national championship, right? Now,
so competitive.
It might not be. If you're first in your region, that's a little bit. Oh, anyway, so you can be one of the best.
So maybe we should. We're gonna fact check that.
I forget if you get an automatic if you win the region. I forget that. But anyway, the point is, they had 5 women in the one race. They, by themselves, made up a third of the field on their own team.
It is very impressive.
So speculation was that maybe Toohey was intentionally controlling the race to try to give her teammates a better chance as well.
A scoring point.
Speculation. I have not heard anyone affirm or confirm that from NC State. But
we also heard that she was helping them
in the region.
The regional
to try to get
try
them
to
there
get
too.
as many as possible. So, yeah, Courtney Wayman of BYU, she ended up running a collegiate record. Now, try to think of what you think the collegiate
record in the 3,000
be.
meter steeplechase. We forgot to add that.
9:16.
Smoking
9:16
for 3,000 meter steeplechase for the women.
Wow.
That puts her number 5 on the USA all-time female list.
which means
Number
that
5.
she is definitely one to watch for the U.S. Championships.
It's also the fastest time run by an American this year over all the pros too. So yes, one to watch. That is her 3rd national title as well in the NCAA, running for BYU. I believe she's now done. I think this is it for her eligibility.
For eligibility, but she's not done.
Well, I mean, I don't mean she's done
her
running.
career, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, her running career will continue on.
Good things all around. Well,
Yes.
we wanted to do like a kind of lightning round here of just
there's
a bunch
so
of
much
other
good running.
fast things. So number 3 for the world of running is a bunch of
Speed
things.
round, yeah.
Yeah. Let's start with the Portland Track Festival.
It was nasty and it's raining, but it was still super competitive. Yard Nagoose, who's been on our podcast before, won the 1,500 meter run in 3:34.98, which was just under the world qualification mark of 3:35, and he was the only one to get the world qualification standard, as you might guess, since he was so close underneath it.
If I'm remembering right, that puts him 15th in the world list.
I didn't double check.
I believe it is 15th.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
That's really
Christy Weitzer of the USA, who we've talked about on this podcast a lot because she seems to be racing
She's
really
very
well
fast.
lately. She ran a meet record at the Portland Track and Field Festival, 1,500 meter run in 4:75.
Solid. Also
Yes.
putting her high up in the world list this year as well.
And also in the 5,000 meter run, there was a really strong field, and Wayne Kaladi of the USA dropped another sub 15 5,000. So again, this is really fast. This is really fast stuff. She's one that has been on the roads and the track now, so that will be exciting to see her at the U.S. Championships.
Indeed it shall. Let's talk about some high schoolers, or one in particular, for a moment. Addie Wiley of Indiana has done some very impressive things recently. Actually, not recently, but like for a while.
That's an understatement.
It is. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start with the oldest accomplishment, because last year at the Indiana State High School meet, she set a new record, I guess you could say, for the meet by winning both the 800 meter and 1,600 meter runs in the same meet.
Wow.
Never been done before in Indiana.
This is a state meet?
Yes, this was a state meet in Indiana.
Okay.
Now, so she did that last year, and she was the first one to do it. And then she did it again this year, making her the only the second time anyone's ever done it, and the only time anyone's ever done it twice in a row. So that is impressive.
Yeah.
That no one's ever been doing that, and here she comes. However, not only did she do that, shortly after that, like in a different meet, she then proceeded to run a new high school 1,600 meter / 1 mile record in 4:26.1.
So it's not a full mile.
She ran a 1,600, but they give you the record either way because they translate it. So her 1,600 translates to, even if it were a full mile, which is only an extra 9 meters. But if she were to run the full mile and not fall over before she reaches the end of the 9 meters, she would have then also beaten Mary Kane's 1 mile record, which is a crazy fast record.
Yeah.
So that's really something.
So, but Mary Kane still holds the 800 meter record. Then.
Yeah, this is
both.
not an 800 thing. It's a different race.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should continue on because there was an epic duel.
Yes,
that has been reaffirmed. So we're noting on the roads lately that it seems like Kira D'Amato and Alafine Tuliamuk have been racing each other a fair bit.
Yes, they have.
Which is fun. They've done a 25K, they've done a 6K, and now a 10K at the New York City Mini 10K. And once again, it was definitely down to the wire between the two of them. They're always like so right fun. There. It's cool. But in this instance, it was D'Amato who took the win, now putting her for 2 for 3 this spring between the two of them, although each one has been a very, very tight one.
Yep.
And not only a victory.
Yeah. She was the second fastest 10K time in history by American woman.
Whoa.
So 11 seconds behind Shailene Flanagan's record of 30:52.
11 seconds behind.
Yeah.
That's Shailene's record. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Kira was 3rd in the race behind Ethiopian and Kenyan, who were just a bit ahead. It was kind of like one of those races where it started to spread out, and then they started to kind of reel back in, and then so it was a good strong run from the Americans in 3rd and 4th place as well. Okay, last up, Eilish McColgan wows yet again of Great Britain.
Every other week.
It just seems like she's just nonstop. So she's been on the roads doing crazy impressive things, like beating Paula Radcliffe records, things like that. That's really something. Now, she jumped on a track to demonstrate to the world that she is, in fact, just as good, regardless of the surfaces she's running on.
Yep.
And in this instance, buried an impressive world-class field of runners to take the number 2 all-time United Kingdom 10,000 meter. So indeed, she did not break Paula Radcliffe's 10,000 meter time, but she did wallop the field running 30:19.
30:19.
25 seconds ahead of second place.
Wow.
25
And that was
seconds.
Letezabet Gaudet.
World record holder
Letezabet
Gaudet, and bronze medalist from the Olympics last year, and McColgan just ran away from them all.
That's really amazing.
That's really cool.
Eilish has come to have quite the range, as we can tell by her record board. But it's cool to see her now like doing this on the track. So exciting things to come. The race had 15 runners break into the world top 20 lists.
That's a fast race.
That's really, really fast.
It should be noted that the 10,000 has not really seen very many competitive contests this year yet. And so in that instance, the fact that you have that many people break in is largely just because it was a shallow list at the moment.
Okay.
But they were running fast, and McColgan still put them all behind her.
So I guess Elise Cranny still holds the number 1 spot,
yes.
which is a really interesting fact. So USA's Elise Cranny, she ran 30:14 back in March.
Yeah. Now, people have been speculating she might be injured,
Yeah.
which would be tragic because she was firing on all cylinders earlier this spring.
Yeah, but these things happen.
They do.
So hoping to see her back soon. Krista Weitzer had that surgery and came back really strong.
Truth.
So I mean, we don't know what she can do, and we're looking forward to see her running fast again too.
And speaking of things we're looking forward to, and you are looking forward to the end of this conversation, but we are looking forward to your communication because we love it. And if we cannot emphasize enough, that's the thing that we enjoy the most about what we do here is interacting with other runners. So send us your comments on all the places you're consuming the content. If you're on YouTube, post the comments there. If you're on the socials, which I guess those are things, post there too. But most importantly, if you have questions, and we would love to hear them because we'll feature them on air. If you have questions, go to AtoZrunning.com/question, and you can, in fact, share them with us.
In context.
And give us all the details.
Yeah.
We like it. And then if you need something more, please remember that we would love to just hear your thoughts and questions and love to help you out as best we can, certainly if we have something to offer. But if you need something more, head to AtoZrunning.com, look for the word coaching, and see if a service might be of help to you.
We are so glad you've joined us. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next week.